The garden was wrapped in night's silver hush, as if the whole world were gently holding its breath. High on a leaf that glowed with moonlight, the little Glimmer caterpillar stirred. He didn't remember falling asleep, but here he was, tucked neatly in a soft curl, his green and gold striped body slowly uncoiling with the rhythm of a deep yawn. He blinked twice. The sky above sparkled with stars so soft and close they looked like dewdrops floating in the sky. A round, full moon rested in the center of it all, watching over the garden like a quiet guardian. The leaf beneath him swayed a little with the breeze, but it wasn't scary. It felt like being rocked in a cradle. He stretched his 6 stumpy legs, one at a time. Each movement was slow and deliberate, like waking from the coziest nap you've ever had. A tiny smile tugged at his sleepy mouth as he rolled aside and breathed in the crisp air. It smelled like mint and lavender and something sweet he couldn't quite name. The Glimmer caterpillar took another deep breath, slower this time, as if the garden had whispered, "No rush." Everything felt peaceful. Everything felt still. But inside him, a tiny ripple of curiosity began to unfurl. "Where am I?" he thought. He blinked again, looking left and right. All around him were enormous leaves, bigger than the biggest hats he'd ever seen, and curling vines that looked like soft green ladders twisting up to the stars. He shuffled to the edge of his moon-drenched leaf. The edge wasn't sharp or scary. It dipped downward like a little slide. He peered over and gasped softly. Beneath him stretched a whole kingdom of flowers and grass and sparkling puddles, glowing with the reflection of the moon. It was all so familiar, yet felt different, larger, softer, kinder. He didn't remember climbing up to this place. But now that he was here, high above the ground, with the garden breathing quietly all around him, he didn't feel lost. He felt lucky. Above, the fireflies had started their dance. Slow flickers of gold weaving in the air, like stars that had come down from the sky just to say hello. One hovered close, its warm light pulsing gently. The caterpillar watched in wonder as it dipped and floated, almost like it was waiting for him. Without a word, the firefly blinked once, twice, then drifted forward, its light guiding the air. The caterpillar understood. It was time to explore. Time to follow the path of wonder that was slowly unfolding in the quiet of the moonlit night. So he inched forward, one soft leg after another, and began his moonlit journey. The little Glimmer caterpillar followed the firefly, each step slow and measured, like a lullaby played with tiny footsteps. The leaf beneath him curved downward, gently guiding him into a new world he had never seen from this high before. The firefly hovered just ahead, its light glowing and dimming like a quiet heartbeat. It made no sound, but the caterpillar felt like it was humming a tune only he could hear. The path led him across a winding trail of leaves, some wide and firm, others soft and springy. Each leaf felt different underfoot, like walking across little green pillows, some warm, some cool with the breath of the night air. One leaf still held raindrops from a forgotten shower early in the day, and he paused to dip a foot into one. It tickled. He giggled softly, surprised at how cold it was, like a little puddle of moonlight. Below him, the garden swayed. Grass blades waved like sleepy hands, and clusters of wildflowers blinked open slowly, as if they too were waking up just to watch him pass. Somewhere far below, he heard the hush-hush of tall grass brushing against each other in the breeze. Even the wind was gentle tonight. He came to a small fork in the leaf ladder. One path curled downward to a cluster of soft, round leaves. The other rose toward the branch tips, where a glowing mist hovered like a cloud caught in tree limbs. He looked at the firefly for guidance, but it just hovered there, waiting. The caterpillar took a moment to close his eyes and feel. His tiny body swayed with the breeze, and his little legs gripped the leaf like fingers holding onto a blanket. His heart didn't race, it swayed. His mind didn't shout, it listened. And so, he chose a higher path. Each leaf he climbed led to another, like nature's own staircase. As he ascended, the air grew thinner but sweeter, filled with the scent of honeysuckle and something rich and earthy. Somewhere nearby, an owl cooed softly, not an alarm, but in rhythm with the wind. The caterpillar smiled. A small branch blocked his path. It looked too wide to crawl over. He paused, unsure. But then a breeze, like a helpful hand, rustled through the leaves and shifted the branch just enough for him to squeeze beneath. He wriggled through and found himself standing on a tiny ledge, high above the world, where the stars felt close enough to whisper to. He stood still for a long time, watching the lights of the firefly echo against the stars. He wasn't just climbing through leaves. He was walking through a world built just for him, a soft, sleepy maze of scents, songs, and secrets. As the firefly led him onward into branches wrapped in moonlight mist, the little Glimmer caterpillar knew this was only the beginning of his magical night. The higher the little Glimmer caterpillar climbed, the softer the world seemed to become. The leaves above rustled like whispers, and each branch swayed like it was nodding a greeting. The air was filled with a quiet murmur, as though everything in the garden was gently talking to itself. But it wasn't the kind of talking meant to be heard. It was the kind meant to be felt. He emerged onto a wide, mossy platform tucked between the arms of an old tree. It wasn't flat or smooth. It was wonderfully bumpy, like a patchwork quilt of green and gold. Tiny clusters of moss curled like sleeping animals, while little blooms peeked out from the edges like curious children staying up past bedtime. The firefly drifted above him, circling slowly before gently landing on a curled petal that shimmered in the moonlight. The petal unfurled just slightly under the firefly's weight, then folded itself again, as if it had been waiting for company. The caterpillar took a deep breath and stepped forward. The moss felt warm and soft under his belly. It was comforting, like being hugged by the ground. He paused and pressed his cheek against it, feeling the tiniest thrum, like a heartbeat beneath the soil. The tree, the flowers, the moss, they were all alive, all breathing, all listening. He crawled slowly across the mossy patch and came upon a tiny garden nestled in the corner of the branch. It looked like a secret place. Miniature blossoms blinked open and closed in slow rhythm, pulsing with color, lavender, pale blue, lemon yellow. They didn't shine like stars. They glowed like memories, soft and deep. Then the murmurs began. They weren't words, not really. More like feelings being wrapped in sound. A hush of welcome. A sigh of you are safe. A whisper of you belong here. The caterpillar looked around. No mouse moved, yet the garden spoke in its own gentle language of presence and peace. A petal gently bent toward him, its tip brushing his side, not to tickle, just to say hello. I hear you, he whispered back, surprised by his own voice. It came out soft and unsure, but the petal curled happily at the sound. The flowers liked to be heard, and they liked listening, too. He sat quietly in the middle of the moss, folding his little legs beneath him. He didn't need to go anywhere just yet. The garden wasn't in a hurry, so he wouldn't be either. The firefly waited nearby, still and glowing. A soft hum rose from the blossoms, like a lullaby without words. The Glimmer caterpillar closed his eyes and let the sound wrap around him like a blanket. For the first time, he realized he didn't feel small. He felt exactly the right size to be part of something big and beautiful. He stayed there for a long while, resting in the meadow of murmurs, before the next part of his journey quietly called him forward. When the little Glimmer caterpillar finally opened his eyes again, the moss had grown a little warmer, and the flowers had closed gently like sleeping friends. The firefly was still there, glowing faintly in a soft circle, as if keeping watch over his nap. The night had not changed much. The moon still shone like a friendly eye, and the stars still blinked like distant lullabies. But something in the air was different now. The breeze that brushed over his back felt cooler and quicker. It wasn't hurrying him, but it was calling. The firefly lifted into the air and floated toward the far edge of the mossy landing, where a curling vine wrapped around a branch like a green ribbon. The vine twisted downward in slow loops, swaying gently in the wind. The caterpillar felt his legs tingle. That was the path. He took his time. Each loop of the vine dipped a little more than the last, winding downward like a staircase woven by moonlight and leaves. The wind hummed louder here, not sharp or cold, but like a sighing flute. And then he heard it, the whisper. It wasn't coming from any creature. It came from the wind itself. Soft phrases, like wishes being spoken by someone too shy to say them out loud. Keep going, said one breeze. You are doing just fine, sighed another. You're learning how to be, murmured a third. The caterpillar paused. He listened, and the more he listened, the more he realized that these whispers weren't strange. They were his own feelings, spoken out loud by the wind. His little heart gave a quiet flutter. He kept crawling down and around into the curling vine, while the wind played gently with his antennae. A leaf floated past him, twirling as it fell. He watched it spin like a sleepy dancer, and for a moment, he imagined himself with wings, gliding just like that leaf. But for now, he was a caterpillar, and this winding vine was the sky. When he reached the bottom, he found himself on a branch that looked out over the entire sleeping garden. From here, he could see the wildflowers swaying, the ferns bowing, and the trees' arms stretching out like a lullaby. And far below, he saw something new, tiny flickers of golden sparks blinking across the grass. Not fireflies, but something steadier. It was time to visit the lantern field. The little Glimmer caterpillar climbed carefully down the final stretch of bark, each groove guiding his feet like lines in a bedtime story. The branch led him to a low arching root, and that root opened out into the softest field he had ever seen. This was a lantern field. It wasn't lit by lamps or torches. The glow came from the tips of tall flower stems. Each stem held a gentle golden bloom, like dandelions made of light. They didn't flicker like fireflies, nor burn like stars. They glowed with the quiet warmth of wishes. As he stepped into the field, the glow wrapped around him like a warm bath. His soft green body shimmered with a reflection of hundreds of lights. The flowers seemed to recognize him, not as a stranger, but as one of their own. Their stems leaned slightly as he passed, bowing and greeting. Some even wiggled gently as if to say, "Welcome home." The air in the lantern field was sweet, filled with the scent of sleepy jasmine and soft earth. Every breath the caterpillar took felt like sipping a lullaby. And then he noticed something magical. Each flower made a tiny sound as it swayed. It wasn't music in the way songs are sung, but something deeper. A hum, a hush, a glow you could hear. He walked slowly, deliberately, through the rows of glowing blooms. His little feet tickled the ground, and with each step, he felt the world becoming softer, sleepier, slower. He didn't want to rush. He didn't have to. At the very center of the field was a tiny circle where all the flowers leaned outward, forming a quiet cradle of space. The caterpillar crawled into the center, curled up with his legs beneath him, and let the warmth of the glow melt into his skin. He didn't fall asleep, not yet. Instead, he rested, the kind of rest that fills you with peace, like you've arrived at the middle of something meaningful. The flowers glowed a little brighter, happy to hold him in their center. He felt no need to move, no need to wonder what came next. Everything in the lantern field whispered the same thing. You are safe. You are loved. You are exactly where you should be. And for a long, lovely moment, the little Glimmer caterpillar simply breathed and let himself believe it. The little Glimmer caterpillar stirred gently in the center of the lantern field. The golden flowers swayed slower now, their glow dimming just enough to soothe rather than dazzle. He stretched one leg, then another, and lifted his head, blinking sleep from his eyes. A soft hum still floated in the air, but something else had joined it, fluttering, whispering, like the sound of paper fans or distant feathers. He turned toward the sky and gasped softly. Wings. Dozens, no, hundreds of wings filled the air above the lantern field. They glided silently across the night, moving like dreams. Some were small and round, like teacup saucers. Others were long and ribbon-like, trailing sparkling dust behind them. Their colors didn't shout. They whispered, pearl white, foggy lilac, soft amber, and morning sky blue. They weren't birds. These were creatures like him, but different. Butterflies. They came from every direction, their wings catching the moonlight and turning it into gentle waves of motion. They didn't hover or dart. They floated, drifted, sailed like petals carried on the wind. And yet they moved with purpose. Each one carried something quiet in their presence, as if they had traveled far, not in distance, but in time. The caterpillar felt something stir in his chest. Not fear, not surprise, but wonder so deep it made him still. The butterflies didn't speak, yet their arrival brought feelings so clear it was almost a voice. We know who you are." They began to circle the lantern field in graceful loops, never too close, never too far. It was like a silent dance. Some dipped low with the flowers. Others brushed the tips of trees with their wings, leaving soft trails of sparkling dust that shimmered and then faded like fireflies. The caterpillar watched, his wide eyes reflecting every shimmer. "Are they showing me something?" he wondered. And then he understood. They weren't performing. They were simply being. Each flutter, each curve in the air was a gentle celebration of who they had become, of where they had once been, of the slow, sleepy journey that led them to this moment of flight. He remembered the moment earlier in the night, when a leaf had spun through the air and he imagined gliding like it. That quiet wish now returned, not as a question, but as a feeling growing warm and certain inside him. He would fly, too, one day, not tonight, but someday soon. He didn't rush toward it. He didn't try to imagine the how or when. He simply let the thought rest inside him like a tiny cocoon. The butterflies continued their flight, soft silhouettes gliding past the moon, and the little Glimmer caterpillar, nestled among the glowing blooms, felt no envy, no impatience, only joy. He curled back into his resting place, eyes still wide with wonder, as the wings above him painted stories in the sky. After the butterflies drifted out of sight, the little Glimmer caterpillar remained curled in the lantern cradle, his heart quiet but glowing. The wind had calmed. The glowing flowers swayed more slowly now, like they too were preparing to sleep. He rose with gentle breath and crawled toward the edge of the field, drawn by a scent delicate and warm like sunlit fruit. A single branch stretched out from the tree beside the field, thick with wide, tender leaves, the kind that looked as though they had never been stepped on. One leaf, in particular, curved downward like a hammock. He climbed into it without hesitation. It welcomed him without words. Here, he noticed something wonderful. The garden no longer whispered. It simply breathed. No hums, no flutters, just stillness. But it wasn't the kind of stillness that made you feel alone. This stillness felt full, like the garden itself was holding him. His breath slowed without effort. His legs, usually busy and curious, curled beneath him. His thoughts softened like petals folding at dusk. He looked around one last time, at the gentle shadows, the quiet trees, the glowing trail that had led him here. He had walked, climbed, listened, watched, and rested. He had arrived, and stillness was his reward. Just as the wind curled in again, a soft, cooling breeze, a familiar feeling returned to the caterpillar's tummy. A rumble. He hadn't eaten since his journey began, and now his body, after so much wonder and wandering, was gently reminding him of one last need, a little bedtime snack. He looked up at the leaf beneath him. It was broad and green, dotted with tiny glistening dewdrops. The edges were slightly curled, like warm bread just out of the oven. And suddenly, it didn't just look soft, it looked delicious. He leaned down and took a thoughtful nibble. Crunch, juicy and fresh. Not sharp, not bitter. The flavor was gentle, like the first sip of water after a dream. He chewed slowly, not because he was being polite, but because his body asked for it. To feel every part of the leaf, to thank it. He didn't eat the whole thing. Just enough to feel that quiet fullness spread through his belly. Just enough to say, "I'm ready now." Satisfied, he curled once more into the leaf center. It bent slightly around him like arms. He didn't need a blanket. The leaf had become one. Inside the cocoon, all was silent. No wind, no hum, no light, only warmth and space, like floating in a dream with no edges. But inside, something stirred. Not a leg, not an eye, something more tender, more powerful, a whispered change, a breath of becoming. The little Glimmer caterpillar didn't move. He didn't need to, but in his dream, he flew, not with speed or sound, but with grace. He glided above the meadow where he once listened to murmuring moss. He soared over the lantern field, his golden wings catching its glow. He rose above the trees that once held fireflies, and dipped into clouds made of petal-soft wishes. He dreamed of skies with no edges, winds that carried him effortlessly, and light that shimmered from within. And though he didn't know how or when, he trusted that one day This dream would not be a dream at all. One day, he would wake, stretch new limbs, and greet the world with wings wide open. But not tonight. Tonight, he was still resting. Safe. Becoming. The garden around him breathed in rhythm. Stars blinked slower. The moon dimmed just a little, as though it, too, had fallen asleep and nestled in his golden cradle. The little Glimmer caterpillar drifted into the sweetest sleep of all, the kind that carries you gently into who you are meant to become. Good night,